Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, I suppose you can call it, of me just picking some songs to recommend, to showcase, however you want to look at it. Today we're going to be looking at probably my favorite band of all time. It's a tough place to put in that first place slot, but they're too consistent. They released 3 fantastic albums with 0 songs that aren't bangers and then ducked out. Never made anything else. There's very few bands that I think can do something like that. And while I wish that there was more of this group, I'm happy with the 3 albums we got. Today we're going to be looking at the track Counting Down the Days from The Human Abstract. This is an album that was widely panned at the time, as their debut album was progressive metalcore, and this was kind of prog rock with a slight metal leaning. In fact, this song does have some metal sound on it, but it's sort of a rarity for the album and is definitely not indicative of what the album sounds like. It was widely panned by the fans, but it continues to be, I think, my favorite album from them just because of how resonant the thematic elements are of it. This comes at the very end of the album. In fact, there's only one track after it, and it is about an empty world. So, counting down the days seems like a proper way to lead up into a point in time where there are no humans left on Earth. Let's dive into this track, Counting Down the Days, and see what the Human Abstract is bringing to the table today. We have the sounds of bombs, wind. It sounds desolate, if desolate had an auditory sound to it.
Who are you? What have you become? A charming illusion, source of confusion. Another day and you'll win the race.
It's a very ominous sound to start this track off.
Source of confusion.
A bit of positivity there before bringing back the overbearing emptiness.
Source of confusion. Another day and you'll find your place. A charming illusion. Source of confusion. Another rise to power. No matter who or when, we will know of our freedom. Never again, never
Nice bit of counterpoint here.
Common dread of distance in the hearts of men. We'll have love for our brothers. Never again, never again. We're all the victims of a will to overcome. A will to overcome.
Bringing the other guitar in to fill the sound out a little.
Pause in time, a search for the solution as we stood in line, honored our oppressors, paid our fines, and all became clear as the ferocity inside began. Hear the drums of war resound across the land. I'm asking the faith that should blood upon the earth. It is ours. To repeat our history. There is more than one path to how things could be.
Love the bass line here.
Time to question how and the why. We simply come together or die. To a system of capitalist politicians, false face of a greater power, your empire will fall, bringing about the end of an era. Warmongers, your bloodlust to conquer turns the moments of our lives to a ticking time bomb of your own creation, counting down the days, running your graves. How far we've gone out of touch. There's the right side of war. There's the right side of war. Can't
So good.
justify it. There's the right side of war. There's the right side of war. To erase away all that we've become. To erase away all those we love.
Bringing back that guitar lick from earlier.
There's the right side of war. There's the right side of war. No right side of war. There's no right side of war.
Variation on it.
No right side of war. There's no right side of war.
All right. Yeah, that song's just, it's so good. Okay, so I do have criticisms for y'all. Y'all know very rarely, even the songs I love, it's made by people, right? People are imperfect. It's part of what makes us interesting. As humans, it's very rare for me to call any art perfect, but it hits on so much that I love. Lots of variety, lots of contrast, dynamics, theming, bringing themes back, having a linear progression through a song, but callbacks and ways to loop it back on top of each other. Everything from individual moments, with moving bass lines and counterpoint and harmonies. These individual moments are awesome, but the track as a whole is also pretty fantastic too. The way that it's structured and written, and the way that it isn't just one behemoth of a track that continues to push forward, that it constantly calls itself back. And it's, oh man, like I said, it flips all my switches. Is that a good phrase? Has anyone ever said that before? It ticks all the boxes. I think that's what I probably should have said. It flips all the switches. All right. So I mean, let's start from the top on this one. Right? We start off the track with some atmosphere. We have the sound of distant explosions, and once the vocals come in, we have that melody, but what's sitting around it is sort of continuing to be texture and atmosphere. We don't have melody in yet. We don't really have anything that's in the realm of rhythm, even. A lot of it is just creating this feeling of eeriness, like the silence at the middle of a tornado. I don't know if if any of you have experienced that. It is a very strange sense of calm. I think even if you don't know you're in the eye, you can still feel the energy of the storm. You know that there's still more coming, that you've only gotten halfway through this event, and that this silence is temporary. And that's what the beginning of this feels like. It's eerie. There's a crackling in the air. You can feel that whatever's happening isn't done. And that tension is represented through the suspended chords, but also just the eerie sound of these instruments. And of course, we have the vocalist at a lower part of their range, just kind of coming in with this smoother movement. It's all very collected and very calm, but sinister, devious. Something sits on the edge, a tension. It's a really great way of combining um, extra sound effects with the instrumentation and the vocal delivery to create a very specific mood at the beginning of this track. What I love is right after this, we have an uplifting guitar solo, just for 10 seconds, 15 seconds or so. Lots of sweep picking, lots of really bright, close to major scale movement. Um, it just feels like, oh, we're getting pulled out of this, and then we get brought right back down. I've gone back and forth on what that's supposed to represent, but I think it's a false hope. And we'll get into that when we hit the lyrics. I think it fits in with what's being said there. But from here, we enter into the chorus, which I think is interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen the music video for this, but I'm pretty sure that this chorus doesn't show up in the music video. The music video is shorter than this, not by a lot. I think it's like 10, 15 seconds shorter. And I'm pretty sure it's this section that gets removed. We revisit it at the end of the song. It's the No Right Side of War section. Um, and it's interesting because the revisit is both the callback and it's the chorus. It's what ties the end to the beginning. And if it's not at the beginning, it's not a callback, it's not a motif, and it's not a chorus. It kind of makes a song linear and I think ruins a lot of what it's trying to say thematically and do musically. Kind of wonder if I should have done the music. Not necessarily. It's shorter. I didn't want to do it, but I'm curious about it now. Like I said, it's been a long time. Maybe it does make more sense without it. Maybe it wasn't their call. I don't know. It's not a long song to begin with, right? Why shorten it? Anyways, though, this puts us at about a minute 10, minute 30 or so into the song, and this is where we get out of this loop that we are in the beginning of the track, and push towards the rest of it, the linear part. This is just a flurry of highs and lows, pushing the speed and intensity of the song, pushing forward, pulling it back, dragging it down, raising the feeling and energy, and then dragging it down as well, and just constantly jumping back and forth, a flicking on and off of a light, if you would. This, I think, is where my only criticism really comes from on the track, aside from the production, which I've just never been a fan of the production on this. I feel like the instruments are too thin often. You might have heard that, especially at that section. I think it sounds fine in the beginning of the track, but once we get into this more metallic part, it's just not big enough, and it's actually consistent. There's two other metal-y-esque songs on this album, Metanoia and Breathing Life into Devices, I think, tracks 3 and 5. And yeah, the instruments just feel too thin, and it's an issue at this point too. Um, so I mean that's just like a general criticism, but this is just a flurry of back-to-back, completely different ideas with almost no connectivity to it. I feel like even if you're going for harsh changes, I don't know, there's a better way to do it. Maybe it is purely production. Maybe if some of these things got boosted up, it would feel better. I'm honestly not sure. I understand the artistic intention behind it. I'm cool with that. It just never feels natural in any way. Like even with bands that are constantly jumping around early between the Buried and Me, uh, even just metal in general, progressive metal loves to use harsh transitions. They're not, they don't feel natural to me, but they feel like they work, right? In a general sense. And I don't think that they always work here. So that's really my only criticism with the track. But I love each of the individual sections and what they represent, and I think how they're supposed to flick between a bunch of disparate ideas. That's really the purpose of it, both thematically and musically. But I do like many of the ideas in and of themselves. That first ramp up with the alternating bass and snare hits, the fast guitar work, the first time I don't think they're harshes yet. It's like compressed cleans come in, and it's just like, oh, this is what we're doing. Okay, okay. It just kind of whips you around because we've had this like laid back sort of prog rock sound. We had the wide harmony stack with the vocals in that opening chorusy section. Like, it's been pretty low energy up to this point and light. And we get to this moment. It's supposed to be heavy, driving, lots of stuff going on. We have the lead vocal here doing their melody. We have the guitar over here providing counterpoint. We eventually get harmony on that counterpoint. And then we have a third guitar that's sort of center right that comes in with some wild sweep picking just to add extra texture, extra tension, extra movement going on in this point. Like, it is a very cool series of ideas. And that's on top of the bass doing their moving bass lines and the drummer just keeping things driving forward with this intensity, that constant bass and snare alternating that eventually leads into that halftime feel, and kind of spicing that up with some little flourishy parts. I mean, yeah, dude, it just comes together so good. But as soon as we get into it, and it's only like 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds, we're pushing into the next section, which brings the energy way down. We have some spoken word stuff here. And then this rises up, and then we get into more of a metalcore section. And the first part of it with, let me just play it real quick. It reminds me of old school Avenged Sevenfold. Um, right here. Let me tell you. Let me see if y'all hear this. It's a little bit of the guitar lick itself. Primarily, I think the key that they're in at that point. But I think it's also a little bit of how the vocalist chooses to shape their vowels. I don't know. A lot of it just feels like a Veg Sevenfold classic, like Waking the Fallen. I'd even say a little bit of City of Evil. Is that what it was called? That era of Avenged Sevenfold, though. I never knew if that was intentional or not. I'm kind of curious if anyone else hears it now. But yeah, this brings in a lot of groove. We have this cool metalcore idea going on rather than shredding and sweep picking and all this like really intense stuff. Um, and it brings in a darkness and a groove. And then from here, we go into that, I don't know, harsh vocal spoken word with the chaos. All the guitars are like playing their own things. It's creating sort of like an alarm. It's very dissonant, very tense, very energetic. And then this just comes down to a single pedal tone rhythm. A little breakdown at the end of it before pulling us back into the chorus and having the bomb sounds coming off on the distance again and kind of feeling a little bit more positive but gloomy. It is a wild trip to go through. And like I said, each individual section I really enjoy. I wish they were drawn out a little bit more. I wish they were connected a little bit better. But every bit of it is something I look forward to. It's the transitions, maybe not so much, but when I listen to this in the car or just in my room, headphones on or whatever, I'm really enjoying the part that I'm in and eagerly anticipating the next part because every single one of them is great. Now, part of this is the instrumentation. As I mentioned, even in that first heavy section, there's a lot of layers going on, and they all complement each other very well, both in I would say just palatability, the way that the counterpoint works with each other, filling in space of the other, creating neat dyads at points, creating a little bit of tension at other points. We then get the harmony on top of that, which sounds great, and then the third guitar part comes in and just ramps up the intensity of the section before pulling it all back down. Just this push and pull, this ebb and flow, the careful flow of the construction of this track. I love all that. The drums are great. Everything is just very measured, but it's also intense. There's definitely a part that feels palatable to it all, but that isn't the only aspect of it. There's still a rule of cool. Let's just make some great metal out of this too. And I think those moments shine through as well. There's a roughness to it all. It's supposed to feel, I think, calculated yet messy. Like most plans, you can figure out every single step of the way, but all it takes is one slight miscalculation, one misstep, one mistake, and now you're improvising, trying to still work within the confines of your plan, but having to make up some new steps along the way. Nothing is ever perfect. And that's what this series feels like to me, the series of sections. As far as the instrumental work goes, and looking at the vocal work purely on a musical level, the kind of melodies it's playing, the tone of it, the delivery of it all. But there's another element, and if you've watched my other two videos this week, you already know what I'm going to be talking about here. Vocal delivery. This is something I've really enjoyed about Nathan, and I was a little upset about when he left the band after this album. I like the third vocalist band. The third vocalist for this band, Matt. I can't remember his name. He was the guitarist for from first to last. And the third album's good. He does a great job with it, but there's something about Nathan's vocal work that's always really connected with me with a level of passion. That what he's saying, he feels full conviction of. And I already know this, right? It's the type of harshes and it's the variety of cleans that he uses that we don't really get on the third album. And I'm actually going to be exploring a track from that album tomorrow. If you're interested, come by and check that one out. It has more traditional death metal screams and growls on it that I just don't have an emotional connection to. They sound like sounds rather than an elevation of emotion. And I know some people hear strong emotion out of those types of harshes. I don't. Maybe in specific songs, maybe by specific vocalists, I might get that eventually, and that might be a bridge to having more of a connection with it. But at this point, January 2025, I just don't feel that strongly about metal growls, metal harshes. Um, and so, once again, just like the previous two songs this week, once I got into the lyrics and listened to and read them alongside listening to the song and hearing how each of these words are delivered and how that changes throughout, how the smooth cleans versus the compressed cleans versus the gritty yells versus the post-hardcore style harshes in here. The way that he says the words feels like it matches the emotion, the energy that the line needs. And that sort of variety, I think, helps a lot. And the various deliveries, too, which we're going to get into with the lyrics. But I mean, we have the spoken word, we have the yelled stuff at the end. It always amps me up. It pumps me up the way that he delivers these lines. And so the vocals, once again, are something that just really clicks with me. I love this on a musical level. But I think what really elevates it for me is that vocal aspect. And it's one thing that I find consistently is sort of a barrier for me getting into metal. There's been a lot of music y'all have shown me on this channel, or shown me while doing this channel, whatever. Um, and I praise the musical side of things almost all the time. Vocals, I feel like I have less praise for them. Usually, a respect for the craft. But is it something that really pulls me in? It's kind of rare on this for y'all to suggest something that impacts me on every single level the way that a band like this does, especially with this lineup, which, yeah, every album had a different lineup. That's, a blessing and a curse, I suppose. It creates a varied discography that not everyone's going to like. Like I said, this is the black sheep of the trilogy. This is the album that I feel like most people, especially if they're Human Abstract fans, didn't really give a fair shot, if a shot at all. You just check out that first single and kind of clicked off of it since it wasn't metal anymore. Anyways, I think I've sat here and waxed poetically about the composition of this enough. Let's dive into the lyrics of this track and see what's going on there. All right. In our first stanza, we're introduced to the main antagonist of this story. It says, "Who are you, and what have you become? A charming illusion, a source of confusion. Another day, and you'll win the race." Introducing a concept of a character who is primarily good with words, very charming, but they're never quite what they seem, being an illusion and a source of confusion. But knowing that this is something that's going to make them, as they say, win the race. After this, it says, "Another rise to power, no matter who or when. We will know of our freedom never again." It doesn't matter who this person is. We're not talking about any specific person. It's more of a concept. Someone charming who isn't quite what they seem. And it's not just the one person that could be anyone, it's the succession of people who could be any of them. Basically, just those who rise to the top with ulterior motives. It says there's a common thread of distance in the hearts of men, and we'll have love for our brothers never again. The idea here just being that there's going to be space between two people's hearts. There's going to have division between humanity. And it says that we are just the victims of a will to overcome. The chorus here that we revisit at the end of the track is how far we've gone out of touch. There's no right side of war. You can't justify it. Right before we move into that first heavy section, it says to erase away all that we've become. They can't see that we're all one, saying that we are humans. We should be coming together over this as a race, as a species, and yet we find ways to divide that, to erase away this core fact of our life is that we are all equal. So this sets up this flurry of events that go on in the middle of the track, that there is a target, an antagonist to this, and that there needs to be resistance to the division that they wish to sow within us as a human race. So from this, we have a shift in sound, in atmosphere, in aggression, in vocal delivery, everything. It says a voice cries from underneath, "Dark shepherd, strongly though you wield the staff, you're weakened by comfort, and there's no way you're prepared for what happens last." The idea here is that calling them a dark shepherd, somebody who leads the sheep with poor intention. It says you wield the staff, you're in power, right? But you're surrounded by comfort. You don't understand hardship, and because of that, you can't see past what your plan is. You're missing the end result of all of this. says that there's action and reaction, like an eye for an eye. The lesser ones demand reaction. You dare to challenge this one universal law? Do you understand now why your days are numbered? The idea is that if you're going to take things away from us, we're going to want to take things away from you, an eye for an eye. This is something that has rung true all throughout history, and if you're ignoring it now, then you're missing out on this basic fundamental rule of existence. It says the course of events were a riddle, a pause in time, a search for the conclusion as we stood in line, honored our oppressors, and paid our fines. But then it all became clear as the ferocity inside began to hear the drums of war resound across the land, announcing the fate to shed blood upon the earth. It is ours. I find this interesting. It's something that I've struggled with regarding the lyrical side of this song. It does say that there is no right side of war, but there is a large part of this that is a revolutionary aspect that does focus on combat, of violence to overtake what is ours again. I'm not sure how to balance that. There's obviously war here and there's no right side to it, but if it's what's required for those on the bottom to take back what's rightfully theirs, it seems like it's allowed, which I think I understand and might even agree with on a fundamental level, but also the no right side of war part resonates too. But anyways, the idea here is that while everyone might be complacent at one point, eventually you will hear the drums of war. You will understand that your place is in revolution and yet you need to take down your oppressors. But this is the counter to that. It says we're doomed to repeat our history. There is more than one path to how things could be, and there's no time to question how, when, or why. We simply come together or die. We have to unify, understand that we're not at odds with our fellow man, just the oppressors above us. If we don't do that, we're going to be not necessarily wiped out as a race, but we're going to continue to normalize things that shouldn't be normal, and a good quality of life will be lost, not over months or years, decades, but centuries. From here, we go into the second aggressive section to a system of capitalist politicians, false face of a greater power. Your empire will fall, bringing about the end of an era. To the warmongers, your bloodlust to conquer turns the moments of our lives into ticking time bombs for your creation, counting down the days, rot in your graves. This idea that to the people at the top, who just want to create strife and division and violence all for your own personal gains, your time is coming to an end. Eventually, we will all see each other as one and rise up against and displace you. What I think is interesting about this song is, well, we'll discuss it in a second, but it goes back to the duality that's represented here. And from here, we wrap the song up with the chorus. How far we've gone out of touch. You can't justify war. We can't erase all that we've become and all that we've loved for this. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this reaction, the song does end with the explosions coming back. And the next song is about a desolate wasteland of an earth. The last man alive looking at his legacy, the destruction and erasure of humanity. He's looking at an earth that's empty, seeing that there's nothing left. We have this revolutionary aspect here, that everybody at the top, we're coming for you. We're going to group together. We're going to take you down. And yet, 2-3 minutes later, that doesn't happen. The revolution fails. I think that's spoken about earlier on in the track at the very beginning. The third stanza, another rise to power, no matter who or when, we will know of our freedom never again. It talks about how we won't have love for our brothers ever again because of a distance we'll have between them. The way that I read this is that there is a a revolution that happens, and maybe it does gather up support enough to do something, but it isn't enough. You take down one control of power and another steps in, this one even more charming than the last. In the end, evil wins out. It's not the most optimistic album, but I do like that despite the song starting out saying that this is how things are going to go down, it still explores the routes of this division. There's another way to read this, though, and it is completely hingent on a single line in the track. It says we're doomed to repeat our history. There's more than one path to how things could be. It makes me think that this is just one way that this goes down. That there is a class war that goes on, and those in power end up winning it every time. Even if they don't win it this time, someone else will rise to power and fill that void. Someone worse off than last time. This, I think, is where the final cry then comes out, a repeat of the chorus. We have to get rid of war entirely and realize that we are all together on this planet. I think this is a fair read as well. I don't know which one is the intended one. More the dying chance of an optimistic group of revolutionaries, or an alternate reality peered into, now having the clairvoyance of it, deciding that we should take another route. But I do feel that if it is the latter there, that's too optimistic. While true, maybe, there's no way you're going to get all 8 billion people on this planet to agree on anything, and it makes the song feel more doomed than anything else now. And that feeling of doom, of clash, of jumping around between all of these different parts of this story. The beginning of it, the rise of a charismatic leader, and then the loss of freedom, and then the revolutionary attack, and the failure of that. It jumps around a lot. None of that's going to happen in the span of, a week or something. And that's what gives me a little bit of acceptance of the very jarbled nature of jumping around between all these different ideas. It does feel like skipping through time. And that kind of complements this sort of angle of being a seer, of peering into the future of this path and seeing how it's going to end up. It all comes together pretty well, I think. The music working with the lyrics, specific lines being delivered specific ways from the vocalist, the beauty of the layered and dense writing of the song from start to finish. It's poetic, musically and lyrically, while also speaking of our need to fight for our freedom, whether that is through violent revolution or peace. At the end of the day, freedom should be what we have, anyways. And if anyone chooses to take that away from us, we should find a way to figure out how to get it back. And I think that's ultimately what this song lands on, regardless of how you want to read it. Those are my thoughts. The Human Abstracts counting down the days. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything in it that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own interpretation of it, put any of those ideas and any extra thoughts you might have about it in the comment section of this video. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. UTC, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.